The breath hitched in my throat, a phantom hand squeezing my windpipe. The doorbell. It chimed bright and innocent, slicing through the suffocating silence of the house. My heart, already a frantic drum against my ribs, hammered harder, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. No, not now. Not like this. Not here. Every muscle in my body seized. It wasn't Richard's usual time. He was at work. The children were safely at school, oblivious to the simmering cauldron of deceit their mother was trapped within. A cold dread, sharp and undeniable, snaked its way through me, a familiar unwelcome visitor that had taken up permanent residence in my gut for what felt like an eternity. It had been growing for weeks, a malevolent parasite feeding on my sanity, eroding my calm peace by agonizing peace. Every unexpected sound, every fleeting shadow felt like a spotlight on my deepest secret, screaming it to the unsuspecting world. My eyes darted frantically around the living room, then fixed on the coat thrown carelessly over the armchair, a dark, unmistakably male coat that certainly wasn't Richard's, that had no business being there. God, no. The memory of the previous night, vivid and raw, assaulted me with a brutal clarity. The hushed whispers that felt too loud in the dead of night, the shared laughter that held a dangerous thrill, the reckless abandon of bodies, pressed close, entangled, defiant. A shiver, not of cold, but of pure terror, ran down my spine, chilling me to the bone. Every fiber of my being screamed. The bell chimed again, longer this time, insistent, pulling me from the suffocating grip of memory, back to the immediate, terrifying present. My blood ran cold, a glacial river coursing through my veins. Was this it? Had someone seen, had someone known, had my carefully constructed web of lies finally unraveled? My mind raced, a frantic hamster on a wheel churning through possibilities. Was it a nosy neighbor, their curiosity piqued by something they'd witnessed? A delivery person, just an innocent mistake? Or worse? Them. The thought alone made my stomach clench, bile rising in my throat. Every instinct, every cell in my body screamed to run, to hide, to vanish from the face of the earth. But where? There was nowhere to go, no safe harbor for a woman drowning in her own deceit. My carefully constructed life, the pristine facade of Eleanor Vance, devoted wife-loving mother in the leafy, idyllic suburbs of Willow Creek, was about to shatter into a million irreparable pieces. I walked towards the front door, each step heavy, deliberate, like I was walking to my own execution. My throat was impossibly dry, my palms slick with a cold, desperate sweat. My hand reached for the polished brass doorknob, hovering there for an agonizing moment, my fingers trembling so violently I could barely grasp it. The world outside felt menacing, holding its breath, waiting for me to reveal my monstrous truth, waiting for the dam to break. The raw betrayal, the insidious manipulation, the desperate dizzying dances I'd performed to keep the secret buried, the desperate attempts at resistance that had failed so spectacularly. It was all culminating in this single, terrifying, life-altering moment. My mind screamed, "Eleanor, you absolute unmitigated fool. Look at what you've done. Look at the wreckage you've created." The door opened with a soft, ominous click, revealing Michael, my son. Standing on the porch, a wide, innocent grin on his face, backpack slung casually over one shoulder. "Mom, forgot my history book. Totally forgot about that essay due today." The wave of relief that washed over me was so intense, so overwhelming, it nearly buckled my knees. My breath rushed out in a shaky, almost silent gasp, like a burst balloon. "Michael, you scared me half to death. What are you doing home?" My voice sounded strange, thin, alien even to my own ears, strained and high-pitched. "Just told you, Mom," he said, rolling his eyes with typical teenage exasperation, already pushing past me into the foyer. He was heading straight for the living room, towards the exact armchair where— No, God, no. My eyes widened in unspeakable horror. The coat. He couldn't see it. He couldn't. My mind went utterly blank. Panic, raw, primal, and unthinking, seized me with an icy grip. "Michael, wait!" I lunged forward, a desperate, clumsy lunge, grabbing his arm, pulling him back with more force than I intended. The coat, I just cleaned it. It's still damp. Don't touch it, honey. It's got special chemicals. The lie tumbled out clumsy, desperate flimsy, but it was all I had. He looked at me bewildered, a flicker of suspicion, cold and unnerving, entering his young eyes. "Mom, it's just a coat," he said, pulling away from my grasp, his gaze fixed on the dark fabric, a puzzled frown creasing his brow. "And it doesn't look damp. It looks perfectly dry." My heart pounded, a frantic, deafening drum in my ears. He was so close, so incredibly terrifyingly close to discovering my undoing. I needed to divert him, now, immediately. "Just go get your book, honey. You're going to be late for class. You know how Professor Miller gets." I practically ushered him towards the stairs, my hands pushing him, my voice unnaturally high and strained. He shrugged, still looking at me strangely, a lingering question in his eyes, but mercifully obeyed, heading up to his room, his footsteps heavy on the old wood. I stood there in the foyer, frozen in place, utterly rigid until I heard his footsteps fade completely, the creak of his bedroom door closing, signaling temporary safety. Then I sprang into action, my hands shaking so violently I could barely grasp the coat. It felt heavy-loaded with the crushing weight of my guilt, of my escalating deceit. I practically ripped it from the armchair, my movements jerky, frantic, then shoved it crumpled and unceremoniously into the cramped, dark confines of the broom closet. I slammed the door shut with a desperate echoing click, as if locking away the very evidence of my shattered morality. I leaned against the cold wood, my forehead pressed against the rough surface, gasping for air, hot tears stinging my eyes, blurring my vision. That was too close. Far, far too close. The walls of my beautiful silent house felt like they were closing in around me, suffocating me. I was trapped in a cage of my own, making a gilded cage built meticulously on a foundation of deceit, and those fleeting moments of reckless, dangerous abandon. Every single day since then had been a tightrope walk over a chasm of ever-present fear. The constant gnawing anxiety, the relentless need to remember every single lie I'd spun, every flimsy alibi I'd concocted, every plausible excuse for my sudden absences or my strange moods. It was exhausting, draining. I'd catch myself staring blankly into space, my mind replaying conversations over and over, analyzing every fleeting glance, every casual word spoken by Richard, by the children. Were they suspicious? Did they know? Was that flicker in Richard's eye curiosity or accusation? Every seemingly innocuous question felt like a meticulous interrogation designed to expose my deepest vulnerabilities. I had become an unwilling expert at deflection, at smiling through the searing pain, at projecting an image of calm, serene normalcy, while my insides were churning with a silent, screaming chaos that threatened to erupt at any moment. The sheer weight of the secret was crushing me, suffocating me beneath its immense burden. I felt like a stranger in my own skin, a phantom haunting my own home. My reflection in the mirror showed a woman I barely recognized, eyes haunted by sleepless nights, a nervous tremor in her forced smile lines etched into her face that weren't there before. The Eleanor that Richard knew, the Eleanor that my children adored, was nothing more than a carefully constructed lie, an elaborate performance. And the real Eleanor. She was a tangled mess of contradictions, a knot of raw desire and crushing guilt, craving an escape while simultaneously longing with every fiber of her being for the lost comfort and quiet predictability of the life she was systematically dismantling, piece by agonizing piece. One night, as the moon cast long shadows across our bedroom, Richard had reached for me in bed, his hand, warm and familiar, on my arm. My body stiffened instantly, a reflex I couldn't control of visceral rejection I desperately tried to mask. "What's wrong, Ellie?" He'd murmured, his voice thick with sleep, tinged with a faint concern. "You've been so distant lately, so withdrawn." A cold sweat broke out on my forehead, chilling me despite the warmth of the room. Distant I was, a million miles away, lost in a labyrinth of my own, making a prisoner of my own terrible choices. I mumbled something about stress, about the demands of his demanding job, about simply being tired from managing the household. He'd sighed, a sound of weary resignation rolled over, and within minutes, his gentle, even snores filled the room. I lay awake, staring at the unseen ceiling, the impenetrable darkness pressing in on me, suffocating me, a physical manifestation of my secret. The vivid image of another man's hands on me, another man's lips on mine, flashed behind my eyelids, a tormenting loop, and the crushing weight of my hypocrisy, the sickening duplicity of my existence, was almost unbearable. The desperation for it to end, for the excruciating charade to finally stop, battled constantly with the intoxicating, irresistible pull of him. He was a wildfire, uncontrollable, dangerous, a searing blaze, but oh, so exhilarating, so utterly consuming. He made me feel young again, vibrant, alive in a way I hadn't felt in decades, a way I'd forgotten was even possible. He saw me, truly saw me beyond the rigid, defined roles of wife and mother, beyond the crushing responsibilities that had slowly, imperceptibly dulled my edges, stolen my light. He saw the woman beneath the one I thought had vanished, buried under years of routine and expectation. And I craved that recognition, that intense, singular focus, like a starving person craves their next meal. My heart ached with a complicated, agonizing mix of guilt, overwhelming longing, and a terrifying, exhilarating defiance. How had I Eleanor Vance, the woman who had always preached integrity and honesty to her children, the woman who always prided herself on her unwavering moral compass, fallen so far from grace? How had I allowed myself to be swept away by this reckless current, to swim so far out into the open, treacherous sea, knowing with a terrifying certainty that a storm, a devastating, life-altering storm, was brewing just beyond the horizon? It began subtly, insidiously, as most devious things do. A full decade ago, when Michael, my eldest, was navigating the turbulent, confusing waters of high school, he had a best friend, Julian. Julian Hayes, Lord, that boy. He was 17 then, all gangly limbs and nervous energy, with a mop of dark, unruly curls, and eyes that seemed to hold an unsettling intensity, a depth of perception, far beyond his tender age. He was a permanent fixture at our house in Willow Creek, spending more time in our home than his own, a constant presence at our dinner table, a boisterous participant in Michael's loud, messy, chaotic life. Julian was undeniably bright, sharp-witted, a bit of a dreamer, but he wrestled fiercely with his advanced placement English classes. Michael, bless his earnest heart, had begged me to tutor Julian. "Mom, you're the best English teacher ever. He's really failing, like seriously failing, and it's totally messing with his college applications, stressing him out." I was a former English teacher myself, before I'd traded lesson plans for lullabies and grading papers for grocery lists and carpool duties. So, after some deliberation, I agreed. Our tutoring sessions took place in the bright, airy sunroom, surrounded by dusty, well-loved books and the warm, comforting glow of a desk lamp. Julian was diligent, eager to learn, absorbing everything I taught him like a sponge. He'd frown in deep concentration, his brow furrowed, then his face would light up with a sudden beautiful understanding, a genuine joy in discovery that was almost infectious. There was one afternoon, I remember it vividly etched into my memory like a scar. We were dissecting a particularly complex poem by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, something about forbidden desires and hidden truths about the soul's yearning. He looked up from the worn text, his dark eyes so serious, so perceptive, so unnervingly intense, met mine. It wasn't the look of a mere student seeking clarification. It was something else entirely, something deeper, a spark I couldn't quite name, an electric current that passed between us. It unnerved me profoundly. I dismissed it, of course. He was just a boy. I was a woman, a wife, a mother of 3. It was absurd, preposterous. My mind insisted on this. He went off to college, then moved out of state for his promising job as a graphic designer in a bustling, vibrant city. Life in Willow Creek settled back into its comfortable, if somewhat predictable, rhythm. Richard, my husband, was a successful, dedicated architect. Our lives were on the surface perfect. A beautiful, spacious house, 3 healthy, thriving children, a robust financial stability that many envied. But beneath the polished veneer, a quiet, insidious erosion was taking place. The passionate, vibrant young couple we once were had slowly, imperceptibly morphed into 2 amiable roommates sharing a life, but no longer truly connecting, no longer truly seeing one another. Our conversations became purely practical: bills, schedules, school events, grocery lists. The shared dreams, the late-night whispers, the electric current that once flowed so freely between us. It had all slowly, tragically dimmed to a mere flicker, barely perceptible. Then a text. Years later. Out of the blue. It was a Tuesday afternoon, gray and drizzly. "Ms. Vance, it's Julian Hayes. I'm back in Willow Creek for a project for a few weeks. It's been a long time. I was wondering if you might be free for a cup of coffee and a quick catch-up." My heart jumped a sudden, frantic leap in my chest. Julian. The ghost of that unsettling gaze from the study, that spark of recognition, flickered vividly in my memory. My mind screamed, Don't even think about it. It's too dangerous." But my fingers, almost against my will, compelled by an unseen force, typed out a reply. "Julian, of course. It would be absolutely lovely to catch up. Let me know when suits." A tiny thrill, dangerous and exhilarating, shot through me, a forbidden electricity. What exactly was I doing? And more importantly, why couldn't I stop myself? We met at a quiet, unassuming cafe on the very edge of town, tucked away from prying eyes. He walked in, and the intervening years, the decade of separation, melted away, as if they had never existed. He wasn't the gangly boy I tutored anymore. He was a man. 25, sharp, confident, undeniably handsome, with a quiet intensity that had only deepened with age. His dark curls were a little longer, framing a strong jawline. His eyes, those same dark, perceptive eyes, held mine across the small table, and I felt an unsettling pull, an undeniable magnetic recognition that left me breathless. He talked about his work, his life in the bustling, vibrant city, his ambitions, his creative projects. He asked about me. Really asked. Not just the surface-level pleasantries, not about the children, not about the house, but about my innermost thoughts, my long-forgotten dreams, the woman I was, beyond the confining roles I played. He listened with an intensity that made me feel seen, truly seen, perhaps, for the very first time in decades. And in that listening, in that unwavering gaze, something within me, long dormant, long buried, began to stir, began to awaken. Our innocent coffee meetings swiftly turned into long, meandering walks through the town's sprawling, leafy park, then into discreet lunches, and eventually into hushed dinners at small, out-of-the-way restaurants with dim lighting and intimate corners. Each time I felt a lightness, a vibrancy I hadn't experienced in years, a profound sense of liberation. He awakened something in me, a forgotten passion, a reckless streak, a longing for something more, something exhilarating beyond the mundane, the predictable. I felt young again, desired, truly alive in a way that both terrified and thrilled me. It was intoxicating and completely, utterly, undeniably wrong. One rainy evening after a particularly late, enchanting dinner, filled with laughter and dangerously intimate conversation, he walked me to my front door. The rain slicked the pavement, reflecting the golden glow of the streetlights in shimmering puddles. The air was thick with unspoken words, with a palpable tension that hummed between us, a raw, undeniable current. He stopped under the shelter of the porch overhang, turning to face me, his body close, radiating warmth. His hand reached out slowly, gently touching my cheek, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw. "Eleanor," he whispered, his voice, husky low, a melody in the quiet night, "you're exquisite." My breath hitched in my throat. Every fiber of my being screamed danger. Stop. This is wrong. But another part, a long, dormant, hungry part, cried, "Yes, feel, experience." I leaned into his touch, my eyes fluttering shut, surrendering, and when his lips met mine, it was a spark that ignited a wildfire, consuming all my carefully built defenses, all my years of moral fortitude, all the caution I'd ever known. That night, under the deep, dark cloak of a moonless sky and the rhythmic drumming rain, I crossed the line. The guilt, sharp and immediate, was a physical pain in my chest, a burning ache that clawed at my insides. But intricately intertwined with it was a strange, exhilarating, terrifying sense of freedom, of breaking free from chains I hadn't even realized were binding me, holding me captive. I had betrayed Richard, betrayed my family, betrayed everything I stood for, every principle I held dear. Yet in that stolen, fleeting moment, I also felt like I was finally breathing truly, living for the very first time in years. The affair with Julian became my shadow life, a clandestine world woven from hushed phone calls, stolen glances across crowded rooms, and illicit clandestine meetings in quiet corners of the town. I lived in a constant state of hyper-awareness, a tightrope walker, balancing precariously on a razor's edge, knowing one wrong step would send everything crashing down. The thrill was addictive, a powerful drug, the constant danger, a perverse aphrodisiac that fueled my reckless desires. But the anxiety was an ever-present, suffocating companion, a heavy, invisible cloak I couldn't shed. I was irritable, jumpy, perpetually distracted. I watched Richard dissecting his every move, his every word, his every glance, searching for any sign of suspicion. Was he catching on? Did he know my life became an elaborate, exhausting performance? Every smile, a lie, every touch, a betrayal, every interaction, a carefully choreographed deception. I swore to myself every single day, every waking moment, this has to stop. I can't do this anymore. But then Julian would call or text, his voice a soothing balm to my aching soul, his touch a potent reminder of the vibrant, passionate woman I was desperate to reclaim, and I'd crumble utterly helpless. Just one more time, one more stolen moment, one more taste of forbidden freedom. Then came that dreadful morning in the kitchen just weeks ago, as I'd described. Richard's phone, the damning photo on the screen, the vivid red hair, his stunned, stumbling admission. 6 months. A colleague. He called it a mistake, a moment of weakness, a regrettable lapse in judgment. He swore, eyes wide, with a desperate plea that he loved me, that it meant nothing. Love. What did he know of love, this man who was now a stranger standing before me? He was a hollowed-out shell of the man I once knew. But in that moment, as his face crumpled with guilt, with shame, with a raw, undeniable pain. A bitter, twisted laugh, sharp and hysterical, escaped my lips. The irony was a physical ache, a searing pain in my gut that left me breathless. He stood there broken, accusing me, condemning me, and I was just as broken, just as guilty, just as steeped in deceit. More so, perhaps. My betrayal felt deeper, closer to home, a more intimate violation. Julian. Michael's friend. You think you have a monopoly on mistakes. Richard, I had snarled, my voice low, dangerous, barely a whisper but loaded with venom. You think you're the only one who felt lost, empty, abandoned. He looked at me bewildered, a flicker of confusion in his eyes, then his gaze sharpened, narrowed, a dawning horror slowly spreading across his features. What are you saying, Eleanor? His voice was barely a whisper. My gaze met his cold, unflinching, utterly devoid of warmth. I'm saying you're not the only one who found comfort outside these walls. You're not the only one who broke the rules. His face went ashen, drained of all color. His lips parted, but no sound came out. No. No, Eleanor. You didn't. Not you. Please tell me not you. But he knew. He knew the truth cold and hard shining in my eyes. And then I said it, the words tearing from my throat raw and brutal. His name is Julian, Julian Hayes. The words hung in the air between us, a death knell to our 25 years of shared history, our intertwined lives. He stumbled back, as if I'd physically struck him, his hand flying to his mouth. Julian, Michael's friend, you. You slept with Michael's friend? The revulsion in his voice was palpable, thick with disgust and disbelief. It wasn't just the infidelity itself. It was the absolute, unspeakable violation of trust, the grotesque, twisted nature of who I had chosen to betray him with. His own betrayal suddenly seemed small, almost trivial, insignificant in his eyes, dwarfed by the enormity of mine. The fallout was an earthquake that ripped through the very foundations of our family, leaving nothing but rubble in its wake. Michael, when the devastating truth inevitably emerged, was utterly shattered. His mom, his rock, his steady, reliable constant, had done this. With Julian, his own friend. The betrayal was absolute, a wound so deep it might never truly heal, a festering open sore. Anna, my fiercely independent daughter, became withdrawn, her beautiful eyes holding a deep, profound disappointment that cut me to the bone. Daniel, the youngest, too young to fully grasp the intricate complexities of adult deceit, nevertheless sensed the seismic shift, the crushing weight of the tension, the coldness, the haunting silence, the constant unspoken grief that now permeated every corner of our once vibrant home. Richard and I officially divorced. The grand house in Willow Creek, once a cherished symbol of our aspirations, our dreams became a hollow, echoing shell. I walked its empty, silent rooms a ghost, haunting my own past, tormented by the choices I'd made, the lives I'd irrevocably altered, the pain I'd inflicted. Julian called. He texted. He even showed up at the house, once a desperate, forlorn figure on the porch. I ignored him. The intoxicating fantasy, the dangerous thrill had curdled into a bitter, devastating reality. What we had shared was a fleeting, reckless escape, not a foundation on which to build anything real, anything lasting. The path to healing was long, arduous, and excruciatingly solitary. I immersed myself in therapy, digging deep into the layers of my own unhappiness, confronting the quiet desperation, the suffocating monotony that had allowed such a destructive path to bloom, to take root. I had sought validation, passion, life in all the wrong places, external sources, instead of tending to the garden within, nurturing my own soul, or honestly confronting the decay that had silently, insidiously eaten away at my marriage. It was a painful, brutal reckoning, a necessary purging. I sold the house, moved to a smaller, more manageable place, far away from the familiar ghosts and haunting memories of Willow Creek. I painted again fiercely, desperately, pouring all my raw emotions, all my lingering pain, all my tentative hopes onto the canvas. I reconnected with my children, slowly, painstakingly, rebuilding fragile, delicate bridges of trust, one agonizing step at a time. Richard and I, in time, found a strained, fragile truce. We were parents first navigating the complex, often heartbreaking complexities of co-parenting with a shared burden of regret, of shared mistakes. Forgiveness. True, deep, soul-cleansing forgiveness might never fully arrive, but a painful, nuanced understanding, a fragile acceptance of our mutual imperfections, was slowly taking root between us. Looking back now at 55 soon to be 75 one day with the wisdom of hindsight and the scars of experience, I see the woman I was lost, starved for something she couldn't quite name, desperate for a spark. Any spark to ignite a life that felt increasingly dim, fading, and I see the woman I am now, scarred, yes, deeply, scarred but also fiercely resilient, tempered by the fire of experience and finally, truly, authentically free. Not from the lingering echoes of guilt, but from the crushing need to hide, to pretend to live a lie. That tumultuous journey through the fire, that crucible of betrayal and self-discovery, it nearly broke me. But it also forged me into something stronger, something more honest, something profoundly real. And that perhaps is the truest kind of freedom a human soul can ever hope to achieve. So what have I learned from this messy, painful, utterly human saga that unfolded in the quiet suburbs? That betrayal cuts deep, leaving wounds that may never fully disappear. But sometimes the deepest, most agonizing cuts are self-inflicted wounds born from our own unmet needs, our own unacknowledged emptiness. That we often seek outside ourselves what we truly need to cultivate within a source of inner strength and peace. And that forgiveness of others who have wronged us, but most profoundly of ourselves for the mistakes we have made, is the hardest yet most profoundly liberating act of all. What do you think? Have you ever faced a moment where everything you knew, everything you believed shattered into a million pieces, and you found yourself on an unexpected, terrifying path you never imagined taking? How did you navigate the fallout? How did you begin to pick up the pieces? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your voice matters. If this story, this raw glimpse into my journal resonated with you, if it stirred something within your own heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Grandma's Journal for more unfiltered stories of life, love, and the messy, beautiful, bewildering journey of resilience. Your support means the world to me. See you next time, my dears.